as mentioned, I'm using the data for an experimental paper looking at the home environment. So the differential impact of the programme on the home environment for those in the intervention group and those in the control group. So why am I looking at the home environment? Well, the home environment, as we've discussed, the other papers have been discussing, constitutes the most important environment that children experience. And with early childhood being such an important time for development, it is the most important. They're not going to school. Their home environment is the most important environment that they experience. However, there are disparities in the quality of the early environments that children experience. And compared to their economically advantaged counterparts, children living in disadvantaged areas are often confronted with adverse environmental conditions. These can be things like parental conflict, disorganisation in the home. So whilst socioeconomic status in itself can play a large role in the availability of material resources that children are exposed to in the home, there's evidence to suggest that the issue is more complex than this alone. Environmental factors can have an impact, as I was saying, on child development and school readiness. So the complex issues that we're discussing, physical factors of the home can be things like disorganisation, safety, noise, aggression, overcrowding, chaos. And things like the physical factors, disorganisation and chaos have been linked to expressive language and receptive language, as Lisa was discussing. The converse of that then is that a safe physical environment can provide an area for exploration and have impacts on autonomy, independence, and factors like that. The home environment can also be described as the social factors of the home environment, and these can include things like parental responsiveness, warmth and nurturance. And evidence has shown that parental responsiveness has led to things like better classroom behaviour, more positive coping strategies and emotional expression. Cognitive factors of the home then can be stimulating home environment, including developmentally appropriate play materials and activities. And the activities can be through the parent as well. So as again, it's a complex issue. Novel and perceptual, cognitive and social interactions. And things of these have been linked with language development, mathematics, reading ability. And again, the converse of this is that low levels of stimulation in the home have been linked with developmental delay and lower levels of school readiness. So the relationship is complex and it's multifaceted, and this is particularly seen in the home visiting literature. So early intervention home visiting programs help to develop parents' knowledge and often through positive parenting strategies. And these can also impact on the home environment. So some of the ways they might be doing it is through providing developmentally appropriate toys or adopting or showing parents how to adopt non-physical parenting strategies. So not slapping, but time-out zones. Home visiting programs have been shown to have a remediating effect on the SES gap, but the results are mixed. As I was saying, it's multifaceted, so in some time points the home visiting programs are shown to have an effect on child development, programs are shown to have an effect on the home environment, and then other times this relationship isn't seen, and then other studies have found that there's no relationship. So the processes and mechanisms of the impact of the home environment or of the home visiting literature on the home environment isn't clear-cut and it's not fully understood, so we decided to investigate it using the Preparing for Life data. So our aim is to address these inconsistencies and to use the PFL data, and we use varying methodologies to do this and to provide a more in-depth understanding of the processes and mechanisms of change. So specifically, our first aim is to look at the static time points to determine if the home visiting program can positively impact on the child's home environment. Second aim is to investigate whether the differences across the groups increase or decrease, to have a look over time and see what the patterns emerge. And then our third aim was to better understand the processes and mechanisms behind the program's impact on child development, possibly an indirect effect through the home environment, on cognitive development. So back to the Preparing for Life programme itself. So Preparing for Life, as was discussed earlier in the morning, its main aim is to improve levels of school readiness by assisting parents in developing skills to prepare for school. And it's done through mentors who support and educate their parents, and visits are held in either the home or a community centre. and it's a manualised programme with the tip sheets that Louise was showing you earlier that present best practice information on things like child development and the different domains. So while the aim of the programme doesn't specifically work on the home environment, many of the aspects of the programme would also affect the home environment. So for example, one of the measures I'll be talking about in a minute is acceptance, and acceptance of immature behaviours and not restricting your child's behaviour. So while this tip sheet doesn't specifically say it's about acceptance, it's about encouraging your toddler's independent play. The tip sheet gives information on developmentally appropriate behaviours that a child might be engaging in. And so it can allow the parent to expect this, and then when they're expecting it, they're less likely to restrict it. They can make the home more child-centred and child-friendly by allowing them to dress up and play games and to use imaginative play. So the data, as Louise discussed, we have lots of data. There's 7 home-based interviews, and we're using data specifically from the baseline and at 6 months, 18 months and 36 months. We do this because these are the time points where the most measures about the home environment were conducted, and so we can get the most data, specifically the home environment and the activities with child scale that I'll be discussing now. So the statistical analysis that we used permutation-based hypothesis testing to look at the differences between the groups on the home environment. Permutation-based hypothesis testing doesn't depend on distributional assumptions, and so it's more suitable for use in small samples. Then to look at the differences of the groups over time, we've used generalized estimating equations, and it's a flexible generalized linear model to analyze longitudinal data that's often used. And then for the mediation analysis, we use Barron and Kenny's method to see whether it's having an indirect effect on whether the home environment is having an indirect effect on cognitive development. So the measures of the home environment. The first one is the home. So it's the infant toddler version. So that can be used for children between 0 and 3 years. It's a systematic assessment of the home environment, and it's been done by a trained interviewer. Who has to reach an 85% inter-rater reliability before we actually can go and carry it out. There are 6 subscales. It gives us 6 subscales and a total home score. They're the subscales there. And it's carried out in a true or not. There's 45 items, and we go into the home, and as soon as we walk in, some of our interviews are about 1.5 hours to 2 hours long, and when we walk into the home, we start looking for things that we might need to score on the home. So things like whether there's developmentally appropriate toys for the child, whether there's a pet present. So that's kind of one of the big things about the home measure, is that it has purely observational items, and also has semi-structured interview items, and it has ones that are either, so for example the pet one, if we don't see the pet might be kept in another room because an interview is going on and they're having a guest in the home, and so we can ask them that question. Then we also, as a measure of the home environment, we also use the activities with child scale, and this is a measure for assessing the frequency of maternal interactions with their child. It consists of 16 items, and we asked over the last months, we asked them to recall over the last month, how many times would you have read to your child? How many times would you play chasing games with them? Have relatives visit you? And things like that. Then our measures of cognitive development for the mediation analysis, we use a DP3 that was discussed earlier. So it's a maternal report of cognitive abilities, and it's 38 items, and it's a simple yes or no question. So we ask the parents in the interview, does your child say size words such as little or bar correctly? Simple yes or no answers. Then for another one is the ages and stages questionnaire, and we specifically use the problem solving and communication subscales of this. And this, it shouldn't be yes here, it's these parent responds with regularly, sometimes, or not yet. So one of the ones that the parents always like is, if your child wants something and cannot reach, does he find a chair to stand on, to find a box or to stand on to reach it? So apparently that happens a lot when you have young children. And then our results. Okay, so these are our first table of results, and we can see the means here, and we've got the effect size, the means here, and we've got the effect sizes, and we've got 6 months, 18 months, and 36 months. And our different home subscales here, total home and interaction with child. So for our first set of results at 6 months, and I should say as well, at 3 stars indicates at the 0.01 level of significance, 1 star is at the 10% level of significance, and 2 stars is at the 5% level of significance. So home variety at 6 months was found to be significant at the 0.01 level, and then home learning materials was significant at the 10% level. At 18 months, we have 2 significant results in the areas of home acceptance and interaction with child. And then at 36 months, we have the home organisation at the 0.05 level, and we have home acceptance, involvement, and the total home score. So we can see that at each individual time point, the programme is having positive effects on the home environment, but the results aren't that consistent, and the programme seems to having different effects at different time points as the time goes on. So we wanted to investigate this more, and so we used the generalized estimating equations. And when we do this, this allows us to look at the differences between the groups over time and how they are faring. So our tables here show, so the first one, table A, shows us that so we can see that on the responsivity scale, the 2 groups did not differ at 6 months. And then over the 2 time points from 18 months to 36 months, they travelled a similar trajectory, and the initial equivalence was maintained. On the organisation subscale, we see that, again, there was no differences at 6 months, but that by 36 months, the control group had their scores had significantly decreased. And so this is the benefit of GE analysis. It allows us to see whether the differences, we can see there's a difference at this time point, but by using this analysis, we can see that the decrease, or the difference is, significant difference at this time point is because the intervention group, their results have just maintained and continued, whereas the control group has dropped significantly. Then on the acceptance subscale, we can see that the groups again did not differ at 6 months, but at 18 months the control group drops significantly again, and compared to their 6-month results, and compared to their 6-month results at 36 months, they would continue to drop, but yet the intervention group maintained their levels. The learning materials subscale here, so graph D, at 6 months the intervention group outperformed the control group, and then let me see. Learning materials, they did, yes, and then they both rose significantly, and by 36 months the control group had caught up with the intervention group, and so they slightly outperformed at 36 months. Then the involvement subscale, so again there was no differences at 6 months, but we can see that their trajectory actually was similar enough over time at 18 months and 36 months. At variety, there was a significant difference at 6 months, but again, the control group caught up with there was a rise in scores, and the control group caught up with the intervention group there, and so they had a relatively more rapid incline in scores. Then for our total home table, so graph G, there was no differences at 6 months, and they travelled same kind of trajectory over the 2 time points, the next 2 waves, and so the initial equivalence was kind of maintained. Then for the last one, the interaction with child scores, there was no significant difference at 6 months, but both scores rose significantly at 18 months, and then dropped slightly, but still significantly higher than their 6-month scores, so the initial equivalence again was maintained. So there are results over time. So overall we can see that the intervention group is faring better than the control group, but again the results aren't that consistent or clear-cut. So we decided to look at, then after this we decided to look at whether the home environment is having an effect on the programme's impacts on child cognitive development. So we know that the programme is having an effect on child cognitive development. So to look at this more in depth, we decided, so our predictor variable here is treatment assignment. Our outcome variable is child cognitive development at 36 months, and as I said, we have the ASQ problem solving, ASQ communication, and DP3 standardized score. And then our potential mediating variable is the home organisation subscale at 36 months and the home variety scale at 6 months. We have less potential mediating factors because we had to restrict the sample to those mothers who completed the 36-month interview, because that's where our outcome variable was coming from, and so we have a few less potential mediators. But these are the ones that were carried forward into our models. Okay, so our mediation results are here. So on our first model, we look at the impact of preparing for life on cognitive development at 36 months. And we can see that the program is having an effect, a significant effect on the DP3. There was more significant effects in this in the original sample, but because this is a restricted sample, this is what we're left with, and DP3 is significant at the 5% level. And then we go into our next model. We look at the impact of the home environment on child cognitive development, and we see that the home environment is not showing to have a significant effect on child cognitive development at the DP3 score. In our third model then, we look at the impact of the home environment on cognitive development at 36 months, and we can see that when the home environment variables are controlled for it, that there is a slight decrease in the DP3 score, but it's only a slight decrease. And when we look to see how much the proportion of the effects that's mediated by the total program effect on child cognitive development, what proportion is mediated by the home environment, it's only 0.07%. And we carried out analysis to see if this was significant, and it wasn't significant. So our summary, we have just outlining, we have significant effects at each time point, suggesting that the program is having a positive effect on the home environment at the different time points. There's definitely something happening. Intervention's good. The dynamic analysis revealed that there is emergence of stronger program effects in the total home, organisation and acceptance scores over time, but some results, like the learning materials and variety in the home, faded out at the later time points. The mediation analysis showed us that there was no effect of that the program's effects on child cognitive development at age 36 months were not mediated through the program's effect on the home environment. So in conclusion, we can see that the programs such as Preparing for Life can have a remediating effect on the home environment. And we can see especially that the early intervention we found results at 6 months. So we can see that the prenatal period that the program works with, and early on in when they just had the baby, that's obviously key because we did find results in the home at 6 months. The findings, again, as I was saying earlier, although the program doesn't specifically aim to work on the home environment, it does, findings were linked to specific aspects of the PFL program. Throughout nearly every one of the tip sheets that we looked at, there were aspects of the home and family environment that were being covered. And the study helps us to understand the process of change in the home environment, and some aspects seem to be more malleable. That's kind of what we're seeing. So there wasn't clear cut that the intervention group was doing better, but the control group results show us that it definitely does change over time. It just has a natural progression. It's dynamic, and it probably in relation to the child's cognitive development or their child's development overall. But it is definitely a dynamic relationship. But we can see that the programs like this can have an impact. At 36 months, we found a number of results, and compared to literature, we found a significant number of results, again in the areas of organisation and total home. The involvement was also found by another home visiting program in the United States, but interestingly, while we found a positive effect in the area of acceptance, another program in the US found an unfavourable result there, where the control group were actually outperforming the intervention group. So they're quite significant results at 36 months. The mediation results show us that the home environment is not having an effect on child cognitive development, but it leads us so we can kind of rule that out for this sample anyway. So what it leads us to look at other avenues where that might be mediating its effect on child cognitive development. It's a parenting program, so how is it having an effect on the children? One paper that that Orla and another one of my colleagues is working on is looking at nutrition and whether nutrition can have an effect on child cognitive development. And then quickly, I think I'm way okay for time, but just briefly, strengths and limitations. The home is a large strength. It's a very well used study or measure and standardized measure, and because of the observational aspect of it, it is really helpful to have those in there. It does contain some parental report, and our cognitive development measures also do have parental report, but a good part of the Preparing for Life programs that we have so many measures, and we have a social desirability scale that's in our reports that shows that both groups, both the high and low, or the treatment and control groups, they seem to respond socially desirable in equal measures. So that doesn't seem to have an effect for this sample. And then our statistical analysis would also be a strength for this study and the work that we do here. We use for small sample size. I didn't have time to go into it in this, but there's also there's some issues with missing data in this paper, and we use statistical analysis to use this. So it's another strength of our paper, and that's everything. Okay.